So this is a whalebone spear harpoon with a foxtail pom-pom. This is a seal pulling toggle. When the Inuits are hunting seal, they pierce the nose through the septum and tie a thong through that, then tie it through to that loop, and then they can drag it across the ice or any other burden they want to do. That's black walnut. My neighbor cut that down. And that's cedar bark rope. That's a whalebone pulley that I made. Set of dead eyes, which is a static block and tackle, which I used for adjusting my hammock, as well as raising game off the ground to, to do the butchering. That's a bread. This is a bread bowl. I used to make lots of bread. I'm weaving cedar. And that's a broom I made back when I was younger, my 20s. This is a fan spear and the box I made for it. This is my archery quiver. Anyway, probably do a video on that as well. I'm just trying to go through a bunch of stuff that I made. This is my hunting bag. What I carried: my water bottle, compass, day's worth of food, temp line, all the odds and sods you pack every day with you when you're out hunting. That's my wanigan, which in English is your kitchen box. Here's my everyday kitchen items: vegetable oil, my teacup, my butter dish. I used to live in a place where I just had a, what do you call them, a refrigerator box that's just outside because it's always cold. Chopstick Rest. I like chopsticks. Oh, and that's some seaweed, bull kelp that I collected, and I'm munching on that. This is where my kitchen knives live. I used to roll up that pouch and take it to the restaurant where I worked at. Or I made it for actually my butcher knives, because I worked in a butcher shop. Oh, right there, that's a potato masher. My wok sticks, which is a great big pair of chopsticks when you're cooking in a wok. Serving spoon, my porridge spoon, my soup ladle, but mostly I used that for scooping my rice. And that's a pasta that will take every single pasta noodle, be it curly or linguine, out of a pan in rapid order. That's my berry picking basket. And my cedar hat. This is apple and gumwood. That's for spinning woolen yarns. Commonly called a spindle, perhaps a drop spindle. Except that one's a bit heavy for dropping. There's a few other odds and sods. Yeah, I still have my childhood stuffed animals. You know, at what time do you say That thing that I've had for 30 some odd years, I want to chuck it. What do you say to yourself? I'm too manly now? Speaking of manly things, there's my two crochet hooks, a 7mm and a 9mm, which I make hats with. The little fish is a hairpin, as well as the triangle thing. And that's my strawberry picking basket. I have not seen a wild strawberry since I moved down here 8 years ago. They just don't ripen for some reason. Those barbs hold that sucker in your hair all day long. And these are what I call a breast yoke for carving. It's not my name, but that was my first one, the flat one. Works pretty darn good. This one I like a whole lot better. It's cedar bark rope, sequoia for the hollowed thingy, and yew wood. Here. That's my thermometer, which I bought the thing at a drugstore or the hardware store. Cut out the white part and made a black walnut surround protection. This thing here is a plumb bob level, which I used for carpentry. Guys, use a bubble level. Way faster. I'll let you guess what that is. Here's a bracelet that my woodchuck is wearing. I made that when I was overseas. This is a back scratcher. My intention with this project was to obviously get a back scratcher, which worked really good, but I also wanted to do like a wedge tenon, because they're hard, and I wanted to know how to do it. I'll try to do a better video. This is just a real overview. So that's whalebone for the white, water buffalo horn for the black, and impingo or African blackwood, which I've since learned is causing a dust bowl in Madagascar. Don't buy it. It's the best wood on earth, but don't buy it. There's my bow, my sword. Of course, who doesn't need a Mohican war club, right? That's maple from sort of the Lake Ontario region. I used to bounce up and down on that branch when I was a kid. And my kid nephew bucked that sucker down because it was in the way of his motorcycle path. So I turned it into a war club. So I call this a tomahawk, but it isn't. See, it's a proper axe with a wedge. It's just that the blade is a tomahawk shape. This was my general purpose. Every day make my kindling when I go hunting. That's the dispatching tool. Problem is I could never figure out how to make that rapidly deployable and convenient to put on my belt, so I've since gone to a kukri, which I recommend. This blade I paid about 20 bucks for it, handmade in Mexico, since I've never made an axe blade for myself. I'm ashamed to say. I just don't have a good forge. So there it is with the blade protector, which is a piece of red oak from a pallet, a couple nails there, and I just lashed that on with a leather thong around here. Here's my line of vegetable oil lamps, canola, olive oil, what have you. This was my first one, soapstone, I bought from Lee Valley. Kudos on Lee Valley being good for everything. This was an improved version. The improvement being that this groove here prevents the oil from flowing back around the lip and getting oil on whatever it's sitting on. So this was a simpler version. And this one, before I learnt the groove, you can see 2 fat wicks. This is for reading. So this is an argillite, which is the kind of stone it is. An oil lamp. I used this as my only source of light for a good long time. I just got used French fry oil from a fryer. With this set I had a nice glass bottle with a cedar cork that I made, and a limpet shell with the top taken off, looked like a keyhole limpet, which I filled the bottle with. This, I actually just snapped this off right now. It's usually attached on this end. So this is a wedge. So when you light this, it burns for about 2 hours, this lamp. And you know, after half hour, 40 minutes or whatever, you just stick that wedge under that part and it raises it. And then after that you stick it right under the whole lot. And what that does is wedge that up. So that's flat. That's stage 1. And that's stage 3 or whatever. Okay, also, these are calorie shells. I lived in Hawaii. That's when I made the lamp first, but I made the case from a pallet. Anyway, this is the Wick Trimmer. See if you can see that. Anyway, there's a nick here, nick there, and a nick this way. So this one here, I used a 3-strand or a hemp string braided into a 3-strand braid for my wicks, usually 2. And this groove here would grab the wick, and this one would make sure that I could adjust it this way. So I adjusted the wick like that. And then this is the protective box, and then I had a thong that I tied that up with. I'll try to, I gave the bottle to my mom, I think. So I'll have to go discover where I'll try to include that as a full system, because it worked pretty good. I've been working on a copper lamp system, going into the future. Okay, so I'll just do a few miscellaneous household objects. So when I lived on my previous boat, I had a propane stove that I lit with matches, and I kept fresh new matches hanging from the wall in this. But whenever you have one burner lit, and you want to light a second rather than waste a new match, you would leave the discard matches in here, light it on the one burner, light the other burner, and if it was still good, you just popped it back in there. My girlfriend made me make this, so I went for it. I like it. This is yellow cedar and red cedar, and that was driftwood bamboo. So this is where I kept my butter for many years. This is yew wood and this is apple. This was my butter knife, which, I don't know, not really going into all the details. Buffalo horn, highly recommend horn, antler, or bone for spoons. This is apple. It's my favorite eating utensil wood ever, pretty much. So this is my berry picking basket. Holds about a gallon or 4 liters. I'm quite happy with it. You wear it around your neck and you got both hands free. So this is the other part of that set. It's kind of like a milk pitcher. This was intended to be like a whale's tail, with the tail part and his tail bent back like that. So it's like a sperm whale where he's got the baleen, his eye. You know, it's impressionistic, right? So this was a piece of driftwood bamboo that floated in from Asia. These are spruce roots that I dug, and that's red cedar. So what this is for is raking huckleberries, and then I dump them in the basket. If you're a skilled berry picker and you're picking by hand, it takes about 4 hours per gallon. I was able to do it in 45 minutes with this. And some of the commercial ones are actually more effective than this by a little ways, and a bit lighter. But I'm stubborn and wanted to make my own. And I didn't want metal and plastic, so that's what happened. This is my hat. Keep the rain and the sun off my head. I made a cedar bark strap for this out of rope, but cedar bark fatigues really fast, and it, you know, it lived a few years and then died. That's about a month's labor. So I never finished this project, but this is an Inuit seal hunting harpoon. I've since learned more about how they engineered these things. I made a rectangular mortise and tenon. Trying to think of the proper name for the shape, but it's like the narrow end of an egg for this part, whereas I used a rectangular mortise and tenon because I didn't know any better. And all the archaeological photos were terrible. They show this image, absolutely never that image. Well, anyway, it took years. And then I was in the Royal Ontario Museum, and they actually had them in a glass case. And I finally learned how they were made. Well, I sort of pieced it together just by brute stubbornness and made this one. And then afterwards I found an actual. So this is probably a working copy, but this joint here may break because their engineering is better than mine. And this is the other end of the harpoon, and it's used for testing the thickness of the ice and bracing yourself. These are whalebone. They were organic whales. Yeah, so they go with the black walnut and whalebone lance harpoon type thing. Anyway, I've since learnt more than I knew at that time about how to make these sort of things. It's just I can't actually hunt them because I'm white, so it's kind of a pointless exercise. I'll do sickles next. So these are my sickle collection. I've made a few more. My mom uses them a lot, so I made her a couple. I like this one a lot. It's really comfortable. It's made out of brass. It was the plate. It was a brass plate that held my radar down on my first big boat. No complaints about the design. And for a garden tool, there's nothing wrong with brass. Obviously, tempered steel would hold an edge better. This reminds me of a sea otter, but I never did try to improve that to look like a sea otter because it's so comfortable. I'd rather not mess with it. This was my attempt at a more compact one with a stainless steel tempered cutting head. And this is African blackwood. So when you're harvesting, it works pretty good. This one, well, I had a dream where I was wearing this in a sheath around my neck, and so I made it. It works pretty good for herbs. Although if I was to do it again or make another one, I would put a lanyard hole on this end, and a wrist thong. It's also easier to sharpen a straight blade than the crescent one, so for all that you lose for having a straight blade, which is really not much, it's a lot easier to sharpen. So this represents about 3 years of head scratching, and this is attempt number 4. Probably you'll never guess what it's for until I tell you, but so this one's called the Coconut King. The reason for such a pretentious name is when I lived in Hawaii, I climbed coconut trees, and I tried using like a folding saw, and the folding saw would bind and not work very well, and a knife, you would always end up barking the skin off your knuckles. So the tools that I was using, I didn't like. It's single beveled. It's designed to cut off your dozen coconuts on one stalk, cuts a stalk about that big, and then you pop the nuts off the stalk. Also, you can use it like a can opener and stick that in the coconut and work it like one of those old army can openers. And then this part is sharpened to a square, and what you do is you take that and stick it in the eye and drill out the eye, so you can do the entire coconut harvesting procedure with this. Although the can opener part, I recommend using a thin bladed machete. This one contains a possibility of disemboweling yourself or other awkwardness. So the design parameters were, it had to be light enough you could wear it on a pair of shorts and not tug your shorts down. Also, if you ever fell out of the coconut tree, it had to be flat and not, you know, so you don't land on a sharp blade. So it's, this is water buffalo horn and stainless steel, so leather sheath, but there's a water buffalo horn insert. That means if you fall on this from any direction whatsoever, you can't possibly put that into your body. And I have a custom designed toggle to make sure that that stays very tight in the sheath, so you don't, like, I don't even think that slides back an eighth. And also it has a belt loop. So some of the important design features on this one is to be able to hook this over top that big stalk and hang, put your weight on the blade and wiggle it, and that will cut that 2-inch stalk like it was hardly even there. And the handle is minimal, and it's really ergonomic and powerful. I think these should be commercially made, in my opinion. But it's way too much work to do by hand. Oh yeah, the reason I call it the Coconut King, there was this extremely muscular black dude named Joktar, which was his proper name, but everybody called him the Coconut King. And he could climb 4 60-foot coconut trees, rock them, and take off the fronds for safety in a row. 4 60-footers in a row. That guy had triceps as big as his biceps, and his legs were like posts. Very admirable physique, that guy. Anyway, so I made this in honor of him. Otherwise I would have called it something else, but nice guy. For the record, I was able to climb 1 60-footer in a day, you know, risking my life. So I did that a couple times. I was a lot more comfortable in the 30 to 40 foot range. And I generally, you know, I might go for 2 of those, or maybe 3 or 4 under 30 foot. I have to say my Canadian coconut climbing technique left something to be desired. Anyway, I never saw a really good demonstration until most of my year was up, so yeah. Next. Okay, so this is my shaving bag. It's made out of horsehide. I traded for it. I used old Levi's jeans zipper, which I wore out the jeans. It's got a couple pulls. Rectangular ends. It's been a great pouch. I like it. some of the contents are this is my shaving kit. So this is my leather strop. I tied this end to a counter. That side's got the rouge, that side is just the hide. And you have a nice comfortable handle. This is made out of koa, which is, sorry, not koa. Oh, think of it. It's a Hawaiian hardwood. Anyway, this is cowhide. Don't use cowhide, use pig skin. Cowhide, it just won't produce as sharp an edge on your razor. So later on I learned that pig skin is better. It's just smoother. And this is my straight razor, which I went through the pawn shops and used shops and found a straight razor. And, well, I didn't really like the handles, you know, elephant ivory being sort of a second-rate material. No, it was nice, but the handle slabs are really thin, and it had cracked by one of the rivets. It was about 100 years old. So this is my design for how to put a straight razor inside your shaving pouch without risking your life. So this sheath binds that handle like a straight razor doesn't have a liner lock or anything like that. So it can pop out this way anytime it wants to. So the sheath has to bind it in as well as give it some bump protection. So I made this out of water buffalo horn, and these are sterling silver washers and pins. This is the second blade that I put in this one. You know, a 100-year-old razor has a finite lifespan. I got 6 or 8 years out of it. I've shaved with this with our razor for about 10 years exclusively, except for the odd day. And this is the second blade I put in it. I cut it down because I didn't like the long ones so much. So this was really hard to make. And this blade doesn't fit as well. The pinhole they drilled through this handle wasn't perfectly square. So when it goes back, the original one would just snick back in there. And this one can actually go sideways a bit and not go in. So I have to place this one in, whereas the original one, you could just flip it in. And it bottomed out on the wide part here. So there was never a possibility of hitting the actual cutting edge on the sheath. And there was no chance of nicking your handle. So that's how a straight razor is held. And they work just fine. So you strop it up. I'm sure you've seen that. Lots of the Hollywood movies will teach you how to pretend to shave with the razor. Whatever you do, don't watch a Hollywood movie and then try to shave like they do. Oh, pet peeve. Warning, contains pet peeve. When you shave, I don't know where this myth come from, because it doesn't make any sense at all. You see very smart people cutting, and when you cut, you want a low approach angle, something like that. Now that's going to shave hair. Where on God's green earth they got the idea that drawing a blade 90 degrees to what you're cutting is somehow going to cut that? Like, where's the logic, guys? Get it together, Hollywood. So this, Anyway, you want a low approach angle, let's see. Anyway. So that's about the angle you want, and that will cut hair. A couple of things you do not want to do with the straight razor on your face. You don't want to cut at a shear. You want to make a skew cut or a shearing cut. That will slice your face. So you push straight this way, or straight this way. Very carefully, obviously, and with tight skin. But I can go into more detail on that later. So that's how it goes in the bag. Yeah, so my this is almost traditional, except that I use Spirex for the thread here. So this is a portable sewing kit, and it contains I got 4 needles, 2 bare and 1 with black thread, 1 with white thread, for stitching up any holes that you might have. It has a belt loop. They usually had a toggle or these funky friction beads. Yeah, I'm sure that clarifies it for you. Anyway, they had a different type of device, but I like a belt since it offers absolutely no chance of losing it, whereas well, obviously they didn't lose it very often, or they'd have changed their ways, but the Japanese in-row type thing, not perfectly secure. This is an in-row, or a pillbox, and it also has a belt. The Hebrews used this design, the Japanese, Chinese. Yeah, I think there was a lot of cultures that used that, but anyway, commonly it's called an in-row. That's made out of plum wood and leather. I used to eat plums off that tree. So these are my Ipod cases. This was my first one. It was a 8 gigabyte. Oh, music. This is a whalebone bead. I really like whalebone for a carving medium. So, you know, 2 colors, depending on what you're wearing, you could match your outfit. And this was a bigger one. I got a 160 gigabyte classic iPod. I should probably do a thing on how to stitch this design. It's a good miscellaneous carrying pouch. Both of those iPods died. One of them, I was stepping off my sailboat, and my headphones got stuck on my pedals, and when it snugged up against that and yanked it, the jack killed that sucker right dead. This one, the tide came up on it. I lost a headlamp, a cell phone, and an iPod in one error in judgment. Oh, leather pouches. This is my proper sewing kit. I made it specifically as a sewing kit. I did a complete slideshow on all the stuff I put in there. I made a couple pouches like this. I should probably share this design since it's very efficient and functional. This is my awl, which is African blackwood and elephant ivory. If you know what you're doing, you can find elephant ivory in a second-hand shop. This one was a rug hooking tool. $5. 100-year-old elephant ivory in perfect condition. And a stainless steel that's sized for my length of fingers. So you can pierce the hole and use your finger to pop that out and place it accurately and pierce it. And that's a friction fit. And this is another blue jean, pair of blue jeans for the zipper. They way outlove the pants. Oh, this is my sporran, because I'm part Scottish, so. Or popularly called a hip sack or fanny pack. So this is my design. This is I put a carabiner through here for a shoulder strap sometimes. I really like fish as the toggle shape. And I put a belt loop here so you could put your belt snug up there, like when I was in public school, and hip sacks were actually cool. But I never wear it like that. It's pretty restricted. So I wear it on these straps, which means that the contents of the pouch just, they don't really hang you up. It keeps itself out of the way. So I like that, but it's not 100% security. You can't pop something out, although I never did lose anything. You know, batteries and all that stuff. So this was Hip Sack 2.0. Also a blue jean zipper. It's got side panels that you can access. Usually I keep a one lanyard that has a brass compass, a peanut lighter, and a whistle. Oh, maybe they're inside. And this is to keep my cutlery in. It's a whalebone bead with a custom designed toggle for this purpose. So I just pop my fork and spoon in there, and they don't get mixed up with my other gear. This is what lives in that one side pouch. Peanut lighter, Fox 40 peeless whistle, and a marbles compass. Glow in the dark. And I keep a torch lighter in the other side in case things are bad. So then I got a shoulder strap attachment, a belt loop that I also never use because it's restrictive, and the one I always use on my belt. Plus I got a couple carabiner loops here so that I can tie something to the bottom, like if I gather some carving wood or something like that. I can just use a thong and tie to that, which works good. I kind of messed up on my tension with my thread. I pulled it too tight and it puckered the top, which I never did like. But I never went back and spent all the hours required to fix it, so that hides the zipper since I don't like looking at them. And you can see the top goes in, whereas actually the leather should have went straight, which would have looked a lot nicer. So that's cowhide, split hide, with the suede on both sides. This is a canvas case with leather taping. I believe it's a Sawyer 17th per inch. This is the best saw out there in my opinion. I replaced my non-folding saw with this one. One of these days I might make a wooden handle, but it won't be any better than that one. This one locks and whatnot. that's 1-inch canvas webbing. I like that. This is my fire kit when I go out. Every time I go out in the bush intentionally, I take this. I originally made it for those roll-up chainsaws, which I wasn't super thrilled about, so it got something that I always use. And now I got a lanyard on my torch lighter. It only took 8 years. I lost it in the grass. Like 40 minutes later I found it, and now both of them have a lanyard. I just couldn't figure out how to do a lanyard, so anyway, diamond sharpening, 3-inch by 1-inch, silicone gasket and aluminum for char cloth, and cotton balls with a miniature beeswax candle stub that I made with a hemp wick and pouring beeswax into a sewing thimble. Works really good. Fire striker, which I made out of a hacksaw, like a reciprocal saw, ferro rod, and a magnesium bar stock. So that's pretty comprehensive. Do I ever want more? Yeah, you don't really have any tinder in that so much. And it does have a particular way of going back in there so that everything is happy and snug. And usually I do put it back in the right way. So I have to call it good enough and do it later. Here's a whalebone belt buckle. I was into the, the Inuit thing. Kind of went on an Inuit culture trip there, trying to make all the everyday items that the Inuits used. Plus the ulus and seal pulling toggle and whatnot. So basically, I had a hemp rope through here, and yeah, I think words are not going to describe this object. And I don't know its proper name to help you look it up either, so. Anyway, it's what they use for their harpoon lines to make a splice in a harpoon line, which is typically sealskin or something. And you need to be able to have that splice joint frozen at -40 or whatever, and take that apart reliably, have it run over all your gear and not snag your gear and not come undone under tension or slack. So it's a custom purpose toggle. It's a very unusual type of toggle. This isn't a perfect representation, although it worked fine, and there was quite a diversity, so it's well within the acceptable limits for that design. They just, yeah, I'd like to tell you all about that, but moving right along. These cords just recently died and I've replaced them. So this is a wooden fish hook. It's a Haida design. It's a bit of an interpretation. The proportions, although quite accurate, are not meticulously accurate. It's a bit longer. Anyway, so you tie the bait around here with the thong. And you tie the bait right here, and they eat that, and then this holds the cheek on there. It's for halibut and mostly flatfish, but it also catches other fish. They also have a different black cod, but also a lot of the northern you know, all the BC coastal native groups used this type of wooden hook. So that's our Gillette Bead, which is endemic stone to Haida Gwaii, where I lived. That's a flasher, mussel shell flasher. I carved this on the day that I ate whale for the first time. There was a traditional Maka whale hunt where they hunted a gray whale, and I just happened to be hitchhiking by a potluck and recognized some people and went over, and they were serving a couple types of whale, sushi whale, and geez, I think the other was like sauteed in something or other. And this was a actual trade bead from the Russian sea otter fur trade, and I found that on a beach when I was collecting stinging nettles. It's a place called 7 Mile, so me and my buddy had rowed out 7 miles out into the ocean to this bay that I collected stinging nettles on every year. And 2/3 of the way up the tide line, I found that FYI, making a funky necklace doesn't make you a shaman. Actually, each one of these beads carved as a commemorative association to a specific memory. So each of these beads has a, you know, the highlights of my life, a memory associated with one of those, which I won't go into since that would take some time. I like the sound. Oh, well, I guess that was the bulk of the stuff I made. Well, so it's my intention on going into a bit more detail on each of these items. I just wanted to give an overview of stuff that I've made over, I don't know, I started carving a long time ago, I guess in my teens. And I've been making some how-to videos, interesting stuff I think that people might want to make. And I just wanted to inspire you with some of the ideas of household stuff that you can make if you want to. So this is the kind of stuff I'm going to be posting on my channel, other than my fishy thing, which is a cooking gadget I want to sell. So there will be one, you know, I got an ulterior motive. I want to sell my gadget, but most of the stuff will not be related to things for sale, just educational or novelty or whatever. So, all you people out there, my name is Jared Fenwick, and my YouTube channel is Nomadic Oasis. And this is the kind of stuff I like doing, and I just wanted to share that with you.